my first year of medical school. I was at Drexel University. But actually, the truth is, it actually goes back further than that, to when I was in like the middle school, high school age, when my bipolar symptoms started first expressing themselves. I would become delusional. I would, have mood swings. It was very difficult for me to just keep it all together. And I just thought that's what life was. I thought that's how life was supposed to be. I didn't know I had a brain disorder. And then in the fall of 2011, like I said, I was starting my first year at Drexel University. And despite, everything I was going through, I made it that far in life. But I feel like if you don't get your mental health together, it's only going to take you so far. And it was like I was wearing a mask, I like to explain, and just really, really just white knuckling it. And then what happened was I was self-medicating with drugs and alcohol, a lot of marijuana to help me sleep. Pills, I was taking prescription Klonopin at the time. And what ended up happening was I ran out of marijuana, then I ran out of prescription Klonopin, and all my coping strategies, my negative coping strategies, which weren't really proper coping strategies in the first place, sort of came to a halt, and my mania just came into full swing. Went out, actually committed a crime. In this case, I committed a armed robbery against my drug dealer for marijuana, because I didn't really, value money or anything at the time. I just valued wanting to sleep. Mm-hmm. And those I always say, those who know me know how out of character that is for someone like me to do. But yeah, it landed me in jail. There were some very dark times with first getting locked up initially, which I write about in my book, A Very Thin Line. And I was very fortunate for me. I was bailed out by my parents, who are very understanding, who also hired a lawyer to fight the case right away. And then I spent a period of about a year and a half out on bail, basically, leaving where I left off, just self-destructing and self-medicating, going back to alcohol, things that, I knew were bad for me, but I didn't have the tools yet to really fully cope with what was going on. And long story short, I eventually took a plea bargain for 23 months in county jail, and it ended up being the best thing to ever happen to me, as I always say, because I just learned so much. I read over 60 books, and just became a completely new person. I believe change is very possible, and I'm a living example of that. So yeah, that's about wraps it up. But
I think what stood out for me is, as you were going into that coping mode, what was some of the things that you were coping?
That's a very good question, Michelle. It was racing thoughts. I couldn't, I didn't have a name for it at the time, but I just couldn't shut my brain off. And I was like, I remember, the gym was a very big coping strategy for me as well. And I was going to the gym at like 4 a.m. and lifting more weight than I had ever lifted in my life, despite not sleeping for days at a time. So I just knew something was wrong. I just couldn't quite put my finger on it. But yeah, it was just like racing thoughts, a lot of negative thoughts, spiraling out of control, delusions. I was thinking my laptop was talking to me at the time, and it was it was just a very confusing time in my life. I just didn't know what was going on. So it was that was what I was coping with.
Yeah. And so, moving from being a medical student to the place where you start having these manic thoughts. And when we talk about, you and I have some medical backgrounds, and when we talk about manic thoughts, and people don't realize it's not just little tiny voices anymore. It's actually quite dangerous sometimes, and it can be actually life-threatening if it's go untreated. And
absolutely.
And as you progress, you went into, the armed robbery. Was it an armed robbery?
Yeah, I had a handgun, which again, is really out of character for who I am.
And once you got into that solitary confinement, what was it like? Because, for now, right now, we're all in isolation, quote unquote, right? Yeah. But we can still go out. We can still, go to the yard and, go to grocery store. But when you're in that consolidated confinement, you can't go anywhere. It's like yourself.
Yeah.
What was it like in those moments?
It was actually scary at first because you're facing your own thoughts and there's nowhere to run. As I tell people, you're there with your own thoughts, and a lot of people don't like that. I remember when I was the first few months in jail. I remember when a person would get released, their cellmate would say, do you want to move in? They would want to find a new cellmate right away because being alone with your thoughts can be extremely uncomfortable. But I feel like once you push past that and you just sort of discover who you are, and like you develop almost like this natural self-love. I feel like you start loving yourself more. Your thoughts can turn more positive. I felt in my case, it also was a result of the books my mom was sending me as well, which were really positive self-help books that taught me like the power of positive thinking. And yeah, like if I'm being honest, it was scary at first, just experiencing that loneliness, being alone with your thoughts, and then you sort of like just discover who you are. You become more positive, and it was just very strange because as I grew more and more positive, my outer reality, it's hard to believe almost, started to reflect that. Even in jail, if you can believe that, would reflect. I started meeting some amazing people, people who I still talk to, to this day, actually, who became my friends. And yeah, it became an incredible turnaround. It's hard to put into words, actually, but that's a great question, Michelle. So.
I think last year I was at a conference, and it was a fundraising conference, and the fundraising goes to funding people in one of the LA County jail, and
Oh, wow.
it was about promoting the idea of there's books out there that actually help us and lift us up and raise our own consciousness, and that consciousness, being in that space and recognizing what our journey had brought us here, it really create a lot of self-awareness, and it opens up, and the word that they used was awakening. It's like your awaken moment where you start waking up your own consciousness, and you realize that life is more than what we had thought about. So, right. I mean, I'm curious, what led you to wanting to write the book? Because the book is called
A Very Thin Line. A very thin line, My Journey with Bipolar. And yeah, it was just such, I relate to what you said so much, because it was an awakening in a way. And I thought that if my journey, me writing first of all, I just love to write. I probably would have written this book. It was so therapeutic for me. I probably would have written this book even if no one read it. That's how therapeutic it was for me to share my story. But I just thought if my story, I also, on top of that, I thought if my story can help somebody who's grappling with either mental illness or whatever the case may be, not have to go through what I went through, if it saves even just one person from that, I feel like the whole effort was worth it. And that it was a strong driving force for me just to get my story out there. Everyone has a story that is worth sharing, whether it's through, some people do it through dance, some people do it through song. One of my gifts is to write, though, and I thought it was just a natural fit for me, to get this book published. So.
Because it's a memoir, and I've written a memoir, and sometimes when you write it in a memoir, it's actually where you take your memory back to those small incidents where things happen, and it almost like reliving those experiences all over again.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had that feeling when you wrote the memoir.
100%, Michelle. It was exactly like that. I was viewing some of the same scenes that I had lived through, but in some cases I was viewing it through a new lens, because some parts were actually traumatic, if I could use that word. I feel like some parts were actually very emotionally scarring, and to view it through a new lens of this, somewhat healed person was very fulfilling in a way. It was fulfilling to come back and revisit who I was at that time, but also to see how much I have grown in that time as well. So it was a remarkable experience. I recommend it to anybody out there who is on the edge of writing a memoir. I highly recommend it. So.
Yeah, I think we all have that unwritten book that wants to come out, but many people don't realize that there's a book within them and that they need to get it out. And each journey, each experience that they go through in life, it's really a new chapter, right? Every experience is a new chapter.
It's a great analogy. Yeah.
If you were to, I'm sure there's a lot of, lessons that you have shared in your book. If you were to summarize in one big thing, what was the theme that you
Oh,
would like to share to the world?
oh man, these are fantastic questions, Michelle. I have to say. I'm just gonna think about that for a second because, like you said, there were so many lessons I learned, and I was not the same person who entered that jail. You know, a scared 23-year-old child in a lot of ways. But I feel like probably the biggest lesson was that if you can not, well, I guess it's the topic of my second book, Unconditionally Happy, is that if you cannot learn to not base your happiness on your outside circumstances and just keep smiling, your world is going to reflect that back to you, whether it's in a jail cell, whether it's in the outside world, wherever you are. If you can maintain that, your state of being over what the circumstances might dictate, because a lot of people might say, jail is not an inherently positive place to be. But I experienced very different because of my state of being was different. And once you master that, which, I'm still learning as I go, I'm still growing. But as you learn to master your state of being, then you almost become bulletproof. It doesn't matter what life throws at you. You can bounce back from anything. You can overcome anything. And eventually your life will smile back at you. If I could just summarize it in one line, that's what it would be.
Yeah, I love that. Being carrying that positivity around you, and as you're being more positive, your vibrations start to change. Your frequency, how we attract people into our life, kind of start to change. And if you keep thinking about these negative thoughts, and we can actually probably relate to these people who's constantly thinking in a very negative way. We don't want to be around those people. We want to be around people who are more positive, who's more optimistic,
Right.
because they give us really good vibe, good energy. And so I totally agree with you. I couldn't agree more that, having that, maintaining that positivity is so important. I kind of wanted to shift gear a little bit because in your bio, I have mentioned that you're a hip hop. You just published a hip hop EP. How
It's actually,
does
sorry,
go ahead.
yeah, it's actually in the works right now. The EP, yes, but hopefully it'll be released, soon when this quarantine's lifted. I can get into the recording studio. But the inspiration came during this lockdown time, so yeah.
I'm curious, how did the music come into play in your life, or are they tied together? Like, how does that?
I think in a lot of ways they are tied together because looking at me, you probably wouldn't think, rap artist, but in jail, I'd always been a fan of hip hop growing up. Like I used to, in high school, I would fall asleep listening to a different classic hip hop album every night.
Who's your favorite?
That's so many great albums, so many great albums. I would say the Infamous by Mobb Deep was a very big album for me, at least, that I listened to on repeat. Illmatic by Nas was another big one for me as well. But I feel like they just don't make albums the way they used to. You can't go through without skipping a track like you used to be able to. But anyways, yeah, so in a lot of ways, I was already a huge fan of hip hop. I just never in my life, in high school and college, could I fathom being a rap artist because I was just so different from everybody I had seen, on TV growing up, and MTV, stuff like that. But what ended up, it was so funny. What ended up happening was I had a cellmate actually in jail who was like an amazing rapper. He was like, the way he would like tie these multi-syllable rhymes together was just incomprehensible to me at the time. And it was just so weird because the day he left for a drug program, a rehab program. And the very next day, all these rhymes just started flooding my mind. Like I can't even explain it. It was like, it was almost like my brain was like a receiver and it was tuned to these thoughts of just what would rhyme. I almost couldn't shut it off. And I just started writing them frantically. And then I started tying them together into sentences and rapping them for people in the jail. And then people would encourage me. They would say, you got to keep going with that. These are good. And I just never stopped after that, So it was actually that initial encouragement I have to thank the people in jail for that kept me going to this point where I'm actually publishing an EP. I can't believe I'm saying that, but it's so exciting for me. But
I'm
yes.
so excited for you.
So, yeah, in a lot of ways it is tied together, So I guess it's just another form of expression for me. And I wouldn't be who I am today if I didn't rap, So in a lot of ways it is tied together. So.
Mm-hmm. what I'm hearing is almost, you know, music and writing has been really therapeutic for you, because in those moments you're able to, you know, these ideas, it's no longer just, you know, manic ideas.
Yeah.
It was more about how can I tap into this creativity? How can I do more of rap? And how can I do more writing more songs? And how do I put these into words?
Yeah.
You know, and so instead of focusing on that negativity that we had experienced before, you start to channel all your thinking, all your thought into something that's more creative, something that's uplifting, something that's building.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I have a, you know, I don't typically do this, but I was wondering if you're willing to like maybe do a little rap session to show
Oh,
us, you know, your personality.
Michelle, it's so funny. You actually said the word channel, and I feel like you hit the nail on the head, because I feel like when I am rapping, I am channeling in a way, these higher frequency thoughts or whatever you want to call it. So it's just so funny when I was sitting down to write a rap for this interview, I was actually thinking like nothing was coming to me. Everything was coming to me for the EP. So I feel bad saying this, but I actually don't have any raps, and I feel like if I didn't channel it, almost in a way, it wasn't meant to be that way, So I do have a lot of rhymes coming up for my EP. I actually put some up from on my YouTube channel, some freestyles recently. Actually, I just added. So hopefully, if people are interested in hearing me rap, they can go to my YouTube channel, check that out. But I feel bad saying this. I just nothing came to me, so I feel like
No,
it
that's
was
okay.
yeah, that's how it was meant to be. But
That's quite all right. And I love how you said, you know, sometimes those moments it's just not meant to happen, right? And
right,
there's nothing wrong when it's not meant to happen, because it's not the right time, it's not the right feeling. And when things come, things will happen for a reason. So
absolutely,
I love how you said that. And you know, I'll go ahead and link the YouTube channel link into the comments and also in my episode notes, so that people can find you and watch you. But where's your YouTube channel? Is it a long name?
oh no, the URL, it's just if you type in RX space Mundi Rex Mundi into YouTube, my channel will pop up. I'm also on Instagram at rx.mundi. It's so funny because just a thought that came to me was that during this quarantine, I almost wanted to tap back into that creativity, where almost to the point where I was back in jail, where I didn't have internet, social media, TV, and my creativity went off the charts. So it's funny you asked where people could find me, because I'm actually going to take a break from social media for a little bit of time, just to see if I can channel more lyrics. But yeah, they can find me right now at rx.mundi on Instagram, and RX Mundi on YouTube is another place they can find my videos. So that won't be taken down.
Yeah. And I will definitely have these in the episode notes so that people can find you and follow you.
Awesome.
And you know, I can't imagine what life would be like without the internet, without the social media. Right now, so we're so used to it, right?
Right.
How did you get used to or adjust or adapt to the moment where there's no internet, there's no social media, and you're
not connected,
facing the wall?
right? You're not like plugged into anything, and in ways it was kind of liberating, because you're tapping into this whole side of you that you might not, at least for me, I didn't even know existed, this creative side. And it was just I would say the transition was made easier just by the books that I had. And as a kid, I also spent a lot of time daydreaming, which I feel is where, it's almost like your higher self can talk to you through your daydreams and stuff like that. So I spent a lot of time in jail just visualizing with my eyes closed, what I wanted to do when I came out, my dreams, being on stage, stuff like that. So it wasn't too difficult. Maybe at first it was initially, but it started to go very smooth after that. So yeah.
I love the power of visualizing. So visualization is actually a very powerful tool for anyone who feels stuck in the moment and they don't know where to go, because visualization actually provides you, and for those of people who's watching or listening later on the replay, visualization is where you typically you center yourself and you quiet down and you start thinking and imagining things that you want to do. So for example, if there's a activity or you want to paint more, what would that picture look like? You kind of go as detailed as possible in describing what that picture would look like. And surprisingly, I'm sure you know, you're aware of this as well. The law of attraction, which plays a very important part in the visualization, where you start to attract these positive energy, and you'll be surprised how true this picture will actually lay in front of you. And in your case, it may be music, it may be, you know, the life outside of jail.
Yeah, I'm a huge believer in law of attraction, so I'm so glad you brought that up, Michelle, because I believe, you know, a lot of people said, you know, you had a mental illness, this wasn't your fault, and when you had your manic episode, but in a lot of ways, I feel like I attracted that circumstance to me, and I talk about this in my presentation, that I was trapped in a jail long before I was ever physically locked up, because when you think those thoughts for so long, that negative spiral, always visualizing the worst case scenario, your environment is going to start to reflect that. So a jail cell I ended up in a physical jail cell. And I feel like in a lot of ways I did attract that to myself. And I just knew that if I could attract that to myself, I could attract the positive side as well. And I'm so happy to be talking to you today about it, Michelle. So.
And look at how powerful you are. You're a hip hop rap artist, you're published author, and you're a speaker. You know, there's so many things, amazing things that you probably would have never thought about, you know, prior to this whole transformation journey.
Absolutely.
If you were to look into the future, let's do a little visualization now.
Yeah.
If you were to look into the future, where do you think you would be in a year? Like, where would you like to be in a year?
A year, I would hopefully like to have a larger platform with which to share my music, my message, my, you know, freelance speaking business. I hope for that to take off, and yeah, hopefully Unconditionally Happy will be on bookshelves as well, so people can sort of see that journey as well, not just the jail side of it, but also how have I grown in that? I want people to follow that journey as well, and how they cannot base their happiness on the circumstances around them, especially in this day and age with what's going on in the world today. Yeah, so I would hopefully in a year from now, I'd hopefully like to have that book out. I would also like to continue speaking, continue making music, and just being, you know, creative and expressing myself, being me. So.
Mm-hmm. And I would love to come to one of your concerts as you're performing.
Oh, that's amazing, Michelle. Yeah, I'll have to get you some backstage passes. I appreciate that.
Heck yeah! I deserve backstage pass.
Yeah, when I come on the West Coast, yeah, that'd be very exciting.
Yeah, for sure. That's it. So I know the new book that's in progress is called Unconditionally Happy.
Yes.
If we were to give the audience something that they can practice today at home, like what would be that one thing that you can share with them that they can start doing it right here at home?
I think just the biggest, the thing that shifted my, I guess if you want to call it frequency, the highest I feel was the addition of gratitude into my daily regimen. Starting my day with things that I'm happy about, what I'm grateful for. I always, put on YouTube like gratitude affirmations or a gratitude meditation. I just like to spend like 5-10 minutes every morning thinking about what do I have, regardless of what happens on this day, what do I still have to be grateful for? And then I just list off, you know, whatever in my mind. You know, I got my dog Monku, my family, obviously, my friends. So many things to be grateful for. It always puts a smile on my face. And I think starting your day off that way is something I started, you know, back in jail, and it's something I continue to this day. So anybody can do it. Anybody can just grab a list and just write things that they're grateful for. So.
Yeah, I love gratitude. I think gratitude really keep our focus to what we currently have, and you know, it's the little things that matter. It doesn't mean it has to be big. You know, it doesn't have to be big gratitude or thankful or things happen. Just a little tiny thing that we recognize. And your dog Monku, it seems to be keeping you very happy.
It brings so much joy. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna try and wrap things up. We have a couple of minutes left. This is a question I throw at my guests, and this is like kind of bomb bombing them with this question.
I'm excited.
I'd like you to fill in the blank.
Yeah.
And the blank goes, the world needs blank. The world needs more.
At this time, I would fill in the blank with compassion. I think in a lot of ways, you know, this virus is bringing, so many negative things are coming out of it, but in a lot of ways, humanity is coming together in ways I haven't seen before. You know, all these like fundraisers and stuff that it's unprecedented. We live in unprecedented times. So I think compassion is that one thing that if we all just emulate or express that a little bit more, would make the world a better place.
I love compassion. I think you touched two very basic things what humanity needs: the gratitude and also compassion. Yeah. They say if you can be anything in the world, be kind.
Yes. Yeah. It takes just as much energy to be kind as it would, you know, to be negative. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming to the show. I had a great time talking to you. Can you just remind us again where to find you?
Absolutely, Michelle. Thank you so much for having me. You can find me on YouTube at RX_Mundi. www.rxmundi.com is my website. And you can find me on Instagram at rx.mundi for anyone that's interested.
Awesome. And thank you so much. And you know, I can already hear your music coming out soon. So make sure you keep us posted. And, you know, I would love to invite you back once it's published and so that the world can hear it.
That is so exciting.
Thank you so much for coming.
Can't thank you enough, Michelle. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.